Every 4 years, millions of Americans go out to vote for the next president of the United States. About 100 years ago, millions of women fought to gain the right to vote. And about 50 years ago, we passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Yet, amidst all this, out of the entire voting population, only 2/3 vote today. Why is it that low, you may ask? Well, some people say it's due to the Electoral College. But is that really true? Does America's vote count?
First, we have to look at the definition of the Electoral College. The National Archives defines it as a process and not a place, and a compromise between the popular and congressional vote. Now we have to look at why it was founded and the process that actually occurs during the voting.
Well, the founding fathers were trying to get a consensus with the states, and at that time we had a limited number of states, and some were small and some were large populations. And to give equal representation and voice to the smaller states, they established the Electoral College.
So let's say that this bowl is all the votes for one state, and you have the Republican vote, and then the Democratic vote. And now it's a whole swirl of varying different votes for various parties. And now, because of a slight majority of votes in the Democratic Party, all the votes for that state go to them, and vice versa. This is how the Electoral College works. It takes all the votes in together, takes the majority, and gives it to that specific party.
The key thing is most voters have no clue what the Electoral College is. And they just know that you're voting for president, and they really don't understand the process until suddenly on election night at 7 o'clock or wherever the polls close, and they start seeing the national news put up the maps with the red states and the blue states, and then they start understanding how the count goes to add up to get to the total to win the presidency.
As far as voting goes, the people who actually vote, in my opinion, are more likely to be in states that are highly contested, because the Electoral College apportions votes based on the population of the state and the makeup of the state.
Voters all over the country, not just in Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, would determine the outcome of the election.
And some people say, oh my gosh, it's such an old idea. You know, the Constitution's old, this is an old idea. It's kind of a static idea. To me, it's not static, because every 10 years, our country in the Constitution does a census. And then at the end of that 10 years, the number of congressmen, 435, it's a fixed number. It'll always be 435, but they move around based on population.
There's not a lot of consensus on how to change the Electoral College. States could decide how to cast their electoral votes differently, which could make a difference without needing an amendment.
It's not going to be totally changed, but how can you make some modifications to the process? And right now there are 2 states, Nebraska and Maine, who have it where they split the votes if they have to for how their voters voted in their state.
We've had about 5 elections over the course of the country's history where the person who lost the popular vote won the Electoral College. The first 3 of those were over the course of the 19th century, but in the last 20 years, we've had 2 elections where the loser of the popular vote ultimately went on to win the election due to the Electoral College.
The third party has always had a difficult time in all the history that I'm familiar with. Again, the Electoral College doesn't really make too much difference, and if someone could mount a third-party campaign, it might give them a better chance, but so far that hasn't been done.
I think the founders created the Electoral College for several reasons, which I think are probably still relevant. One of those being the fear of mob rule and the worry about the majority group being able to trample on the rights of the minority. So that kind of makes me a little nervous if we could go with just a popular vote.
I like the wisdom of the founding fathers, and I think it has been a nimble and flexible system that has existed well and served us well. You know, when we started, it was a brand new democracy, and now we're almost the oldest democracy in the world. And these are the guys that wrote it. And I just think they did a great job. And I think this is a very ingenious, creative idea to preserve the personality and the footprint of each state.
All in all, the idea that your vote doesn't count due to the Electoral College is a misleading thought that hurts voter turnout. Not only do you have a right to vote, it is also a civic responsibility and one of the principles that the United States was founded on. America's vote does count, and every single citizen makes up that count.